Today's Thursday Thoughts. I'm returning to an old theme, how to spot a psychopathic narcissist in the workplace and how to protect yourself. Now, back by popular demand, I've got more and more people contacting me who have been victims or are being victims of workplace bullying. People contacting me by social media and people that I already knew, interestingly, that have never spoken about it. So I'm putting together a series to help you if you're in this situation. A couple of people have spoken privately and private messaged me saying how brave I am to speak out. Now, it speaks less to my bravery and more to the long-term impact of intimidation that they've experienced because they're still scared to speak out. Like domestic abusers, all bullying happens behind closed doors with little evidence except the impact on the victim. Now I'm going to say that again. All the evidence you need is the impact on the victim. And I'll come back to that. And it's a really important point. So, a question for you. Is your line manager playing a divide and rule tactic? Presenting one face to the group and one narrative and one lot of information. And then behind closed doors, presenting a completely different face, a different narrative, different instructions and different behaviours, a different face. For example, praising you to your face but reprimanding you behind closed doors, or logging complaints about you with a HR manager and department and other managers while praising you to your face. Both of which I experienced in confusing succession, like a roundabout going round. Now, creating intentional confusion is a tactic of a psychopathic narcissist. And hopefully this series we're going to interview some researchers as well as other victims. And I say that because we're not victims anymore. And this is what I am going to help you with. So again, some more stories that you might recognise. One colleague said to me, "They're gaslighting you, Lily." And another said, "You need to cover your back because they're being very cunning." Actually, two people said that to me. One used the word clever, but also meant cunning because they'd texted it. I don't think they wanted to say it quite like the other person. So I've made a subject access request through appropriate government departments. And why am I smiling? Well, I'll let you know when the information arrives. But I'm smiling because I can. Because as a fully connected, grounded, fully loved and fully supported human, I'm not emotionally attached to outcome. And that's really important because psychopathic narcissists create really hostile and warlike battlegrounds. But life is not about winning and losing. When you feel fully connected, fully supported and fully loved, you're not attached to the winning or losing. You're not attached to the game. It's like not attached to outcome. It's that attachment to outcome that also makes you ill. Although the kick in your stomach, as if someone's punching you in the stomach, this is having a physical and mental effect on you. So we'll look at that in more detail. But long-term fear, anxiety, and even post-traumatic stress can be experienced even after extrication from a toxic work environment. I just want to remind you that I am a spiritually aware life coach. Now, I've got a great deal of corporate business experience across private, public, charity sectors in different countries across the globe. If you need me, you can book a completely confidential and free 30-minute discovery call just by filling out the form which if you're looking at this on my website will be on the left. If you're looking at it on YouTube or social media, I'll probably link below. You can go via the Green Lotus Lounge website, Lotus Natural Healing website, booking calendar, or you can just send me a direct message via various social media platforms to reach out to me, and I will book you in for a free 30-minute discovery call, because you need someone to listen to you probably. I certainly verbalised that I wasn't being listened to, and I continued not being listened to. So if you feel like you're not being listened to, I'm here, I'm listening. I was told by another former colleague with reference to a particular manager that it takes at least 6 months to decompress to a functioning capacity. That was their words, decompress to a functioning capacity. Chronic stress left my capacity so debilitated that even after 6 months, I was signed off sick. One day, the carer who was sitting next to me was filling out a form for me and asked me my date of birth. And I just was blank. She was like, when's your birthday? And I was like, no, brain hasn't got that information. The chronic stress was so bad that I thought I had Alzheimer's. I didn't. That's the effect of chronic stress. I didn't panic about it though. My dad had dementia and he used to panic, and that's worse. I didn't panic, and through meditative practices, I've just learned how to observe my now with interest. So I was like, okay, I don't know my birthday, that's interesting. Well, it must be written down somewhere. I must have it written down on a piece of paper in the house. And between us, we worked out that it would be on my passport, and we found my passport. Didn't panic, no need to panic. Life finds its solutions quite easily if you don't panic. We manifest better in calm stillness. Now, my son will tell you that I'm not, I wasn't the most calm and still person in the past. And it's kind of like having a rebirth. Or I don't know, it's amazing situation to realise. Once you realise this, everything becomes so much simpler, and the veil reveals, all. And you're just like, oh, that's what's been happening. As I said, it took me a long time to realise what was happening. So my first tip of the day is don't sweat the small stuff. Don't let it stress you out. Listen to your body. Feel how that person is making you feel, but don't hold on to the anxiety. Observe. Now, I was told by another colleague who is still angry years later about the way they were treated. And I saw that treatment. Another hallmark of the psychopathic narcissist is that they intentionally take action to destroy other people. And I saw this person wipe out an entire team. I lost a year, but I gained a very enlightening dark night of the soul experience. And it was a deep and sustainable spiritual awakening. Now, I can't force that in you. You can't force that in yourself, but I can part my knowledge and experience and what I've learned to help you. And that's what I want to do, because it gives some meaning to that situation. And I always believe that we can take something and make it better, add value. Strangely and bizarrely, and nothing to do with medication, I have a deep happiness, and it's really born of that newfound sense of connectivity, and the connectivity to the understanding that life itself is a stream of unconditional love. And we are life itself. So we are supported by a stream of unconditional love all the time. The other thing I've realised is that the only time you are ever in is now. And the only place you are ever in is here. And now is a stress-free environment for me, because I've learnt to trust that from this moment forward, I can manifest everything I need in calm stillness. And I can protect myself from attracting or allowing toxicity into my environment. So, recap: workplace bullying impacts self-esteem, self-confidence, work skills, negating opportunities for career development and propelling people into poverty while they recover their body, mind and spirit. It's intentional, and that's what it does. It propels people into sickness and poverty. Pay attention to what people are doing, not what people are saying. Pay attention to what's happening around them. Pay attention to how they are making you feel. The psychopathic narcissist loves to propel people into poverty and illness because they are predators. They have a predator behaviour. And again, we're going to look at research and hope to interview some researchers around this. It's really interesting because when I was younger, I used to think, oh, you know, I think I had a poster on my wall that said, be kind to unkind people. And I always thought that was a good way of living. Now, if you're an empath, and I know you are because you wouldn't be watching this if you're not, you've probably been too kind to unkind people. And we run around trying to heal people. Actually, the job of a healer is to channel healing energy when someone's ready to receive it. It's not to run around fixing people when they're not ready. So when you're ready, I'm here. And when other people are ready, you will be there for them. That's how it works. Back to my experience, if any of these narratives, you know, and stories are ringing a bell to you and you recognise what I'm saying, then listen. I saw one member of my team take a pay cut to get away from the toxicity, which had had her in tears every week. I saw the next jump teams, perhaps for promotion or perhaps not, very quickly and stealthily. I saw a third repress their anger and anxiety that was visible in their body to the point that it exacerbated an existing health condition for which they were waiting for an operation. I saw them go off sick for months and months, and then just as they were offered an operation date, they disappeared. And the explanation the team got was, we don't need them. I could do that job as well as mine. We don't need that person. That's how indispensable human resources, the name is. Even, you're not a resource, you're a person. I saw another colleague in the same team being undermined in the community at every move, being micromanaged to a point of suffocation in front of my eyes, and then it suddenly announced they're leaving. And members of the community came up to me and told me that the thing was that they had to let him go because he wasn't very good at his job. Well, who was spreading those rumours? Who was spreading those rumours and undermining employees of the organisation in the community? Putting the organisation's reputation at risk. Who was doing that? I don't normally listen to gossip. Well, I didn't need to listen to gossip because I had seen in front of my own eyes what had happened to that person. Now, from my point of view, I witnessed that he wasn't allowed to do his job, and I experienced that also. I wasn't allowed to do my job. I wasn't given space to do it. And if you're not given space to do your job, you can't do it well. It's intentional. It's an intentional strategy, and it is an intentional strategy that is used by psychopathic narcissists. And again, there is research to prove this. So if you're listening to this and you're in this environment, at one point I said to a colleague, am I being paranoid, about the way I'm being treated? And they looked at me and said, well, we can't speak to your mental health, Lily, but we don't trust them. Now, work is a transactional, contractual arrangement. Trust should not be coming into it at all. How awful that people feel that in order to keep their jobs, they have to work around someone that they don't trust, and inherently people are having to watch their backs all the time or walk on eggshells. That is, my friend, a toxic work environment. And if you recognise that, my top tip would be to get out sooner rather than later. I obviously had to go through a dark night of the soul and a journey and a reawakening, but you don't have to take that path. Life actually is easiest when we are in calm stillness, connected to universal love, and we manifest safety in our surroundings. And I can help and support you with that. So, all of that should have had sirens of red flags screaming loudly at me, right? Well, they were, but I'm not Machiavellian. Now, why didn't I pay attention to the red flags, or why didn't I see them as red flags? Why didn't I understand what was going on? Now, Dr. Karen Mitchell, PhD, I think, who is probably the top specialist in this field, says, if you want to understand narcissistic psychopaths, you must suspend your belief about humanity. So you have to suspend everything you believe about human beings, and that's why you have this cognitive dissonance. And I was getting terrible migraine headaches. It was like born of cognitive dissonance, because if you want to understand narcissistic psychopaths, you must first suspend all your beliefs about humanity, about humans. Part of the reason my dark night of the soul was so dark was because I lost faith in humanity. And I'll explain in other modules how that happens, or in other videos. So why does Dr. Karen Mitchell say that? It's because the narcissistic psychopath has a prefrontal cortex and amygdala brain anomaly. They are wired up differently to other human beings. And they are motivated entirely differently to other human beings. Their intrinsic motivation is Machiavellian. They're wired up that way. And if one of those people is in your environment, you can't hug them or love them or be nice to them or connect to them in order to heal them. You must protect yourself first. So while often presenting or performing as compassionate or caring, gatekeepers of the vulnerable, for example, in fact control, sadism, deception and exploitation are their carefully camouflaged drivers. I'm not saying that. That is elucidated within the research of Dr. Karen Mitchell. These type of people, for example, will be performative, compassionate. There is no empathy, and without empathy there's no real compassion. They are positioning themselves as gatekeepers of poverty, gatekeepers of the vulnerable, gatekeepers of, if you're hearing these phrases, ding, alarm bells. Now, what they will often do, for example, is they might start up charities on behalf of vulnerable people, or churches. I live in a town where it feels like every other building is a pop-up church. It's a lot of God. There's a lot of church. starting churches, positioning themselves as experts in safeguarding gains them access to and control over vulnerable people. I'm going to say that again. Starting up churches or positioning themselves as experts in safeguarding gains them access to and control over vulnerable people. I can feel a few of you are beginning to feel very sick because you know in your past you have met these people. As a healer, or rather as a person who channels healing energy, it's not me, it is life. I'm particularly interested in the relationship between body, mind and spirit, and I've had this interest for over 30 years while working in those fields and offering in those fields. My recent experience of being bullied to the point of ill health has now given me first-hand knowledge of exactly how human health is diseased by workplace stress and bullying. I mean, there's loads of papers around there, so I'll probably put some links below. But having first-hand knowledge of how it affects body, mind and soul means that I can help you because I'm not in that position anymore and I know how to get out of it. I have direct correlation between my medical and hospital case notes and work-related stresses. Now, evidence is everything if you're going to enter a battle, but I'm not one of those people that needs to do that. I don't partake of the rhetoric of war and hostile enemies. Why would I? I understand the connectivity to universal love and support. Why would I need to make things sound like them and us, divisive in a battle? If you resonate with my experiences, do get in touch. I'm here to listen and I will witness your words. I know what it is like not to be listened to. I reached out to other people in the organisation and I said, you are not listening. I know what it's like not to be listened to. I know what it's like not to be believed or feel as if you're being believed. The good news is that you are always connected to your spirit and the greater universal life force. Some people call that God. It's just a stream of unconditional love. Actually, that's what life itself is. And the function of life is to support life. And you are life. Let yourself be supported. Listen to your body. You may have been made to feel isolated. Isolating you from environmental support systems is the hallmark of psychopathic narcissistic abusers. And I will speak more about that in my various answers to the questions. So, the questions. How can you spot a psychopathic narcissist and how can you protect yourself? Now, what can you do about it? Now, we have passed the autumn equinox and we're moving into the darkness of winter. So we're in autumn 2024 when I'm recording this. And as I approach the first year anniversary of my work related to breakdown, a year, guys, a year, I will be alternating these Thursday thoughts between the esoteric and spiritually awakened light work on one hand and the very real experiential knowledge of dark personalities types, people who are responsible for toxic work and cultures because they create them, and the negative corporate cultures. And actually in the middle, I will meet in the middle and I will start to address what organisations can do about it. And it doesn't start with words and posters in the lift and sound bites. It actually really needs to begin with HR departments, and you're looking at key performance indicators like retention, sickness. You've got a toxic work environment when that happens, and you need to bring in something through the HR department to change this culture. And it can be done from grassroots, and it needs to be done from the top down. If you feel like you're stuck at work in an ever blackening petri dish of toxicity and you need support, reach out to me or someone else. I do not think of myself as a brave person, but like most other people on the autistic scale, I am always compelled to stand up and be a truth teller. I always say diplomacy, not my middle name, even if I can see that in the short term it appears to be to my detriment. I was told, oh, you're very good at strategy, Lily. It was a backhand, I don't know, insult. In other words, you're not very good at anything else. I've been a Buddhist for about 30 years, and one of the things that the depleted energy left me was really with not centering myself properly. And at those times when I've had to deal with problems, I have always applied the strategy of the Lotus Sutra. And this is not a battle strategy. This is, it's not a military operation. The strategy of the Lotus Sutra is really about a path to understanding how to connect to and understand the interconnectivity of all things, but also how we manifest our lives through calm stillness, how we connect to life itself. For some people, that is represented by God or Holy Spirit. In Buddhism, it's really life itself. So the strategy of the Lotus Sutra is the only strategy that I apply. I'm not into battles. So speaking my truth doesn't make me brave. It's just a character trait that I have, and often it's got me it's more often got me into trouble than not. I have been following the work of Dr. Karen Mitchell, so I've quoted her a few times, who I believe is a very, very strong, very, very courageous truth teller of a woman. She's devoted her academic and professional career to researching and elucidating and disseminating information about work-placed toxic leaders and the dark side of personalities and narcissistic psychopaths in leadership positions. Like me, but even more so, she was persecuted. Truth tellers are always persecuted. If you want to look for the truth, turn to the person being persecuted. Narcissists, sociopaths, psychopaths and coercive controllers, dark personalities, predators, toxic leaders. Now, she's researched and written about these. She's devoted her life to this. She describes herself as an author, a pragmatist, and a change agent. She's also an academic, but that last one, a change agent, is really important because we're all trying to transform society, and it cannot be transformed with leaders who are toxic, by narcissists, by sociopaths, psychopathics, and coercive controlling people, because that's the kind of society we've had for millennia, and it's not really working for us, guys, is it? So when we talk about being a change agent and a change for good, this is what we're talking about. And we know there's an urgent need to transform society. And unfortunately, many people remain fooled by the doublespeak sound bites and zeitgeist and empty rhetoric of political and public sector people, organisations that are led by these dark personality types. And we are indeed witnessing a decline into Orwellian predicted dystopia. And I think we're all aware of that. Oh God, that sounds awful, doesn't it? The good news is that as more of us stand up and shine a light on practices of workplace bullying, the darkness within the corporate culture, the personalities and the toxic work environments that is revealed like the stains on society that they are, the blot on the landscape, what they really are. As expected, these behaviours are covered up. They're covered up by people, they're covered up by managers, and they're covered up by organisations. And we've seen a lot of that. You know, the post office, was one example. It's still happening, guys. It still happens because traditionally the type of leaders in those organisations create toxic work environments, because what motivates them is Machiavellian. What motivates us is compassion. And that's because they actually have a different way that their brain is wired up. But I'm not going to get into, oh, that's a disability and they can be victims, because I think that's quite frightening, because I've seen that happening as well. So we are experiencing this shift, right? We're seeing light is being shone on the darker parts of society, and people are standing up and saying, this is not the world we want to live in. And we are experiencing that shift. So despite my recent experiences, I do remain positive. Now, when I was working in that environment, every night I just felt like killing myself. I was so begrudging of my life, and now I'm so loving my life, and I do remain positive. Together we can alter the balance of power from the current trajectory, or the existing way that society has worked, and the trajectory towards that dystopia. I mean, for others, if they want to go there, let them go there. But we can shift the balance from this day forward into a different realm, so we don't have to be in that energy. In my earlier life, I experienced domestic violence and domestic control. My son's father was diagnosed as a paranoid schizophrenic. So he was paranoid and he was schizophrenic. At times he was lovely. At times, because of the paranoia, my life was literally in danger. I would get phone calls from the police. You need to move now. He's told someone he's coming to kill you, and they took it seriously. What affected my health most was the insidious nature of domestic violence, the intimidation and the threat and the fears. When these things happen, we were always like adrenaline, and of course that made us ill, but that was not the worst problem. The worst problem is the intimidation, the threats and the fears behind closed doors. When they've made their move, it was almost a relief, because then you could do something. So a decade of domestic violence, which ended over 25 years ago, so nothing to do with the most recent stress in my life at all, left less impact on my health than just 18 months of working in a toxic environment. 18 months of workplace bullying had more impact than a decade of domestic violence. I'm going to repeat that. And it won't be the last statement that might shock you in this series. A decade of domestic violence, which ended over 25 years ago, left less impact on my health than just 18 months of workplace bullying. That takes me back to point one. If you want to understand what's happening, look at the impact on the victim. That's all the evidence you need. Everything else is a cover-up. Like domestic violence, workplace bullying takes place behind closed doors. We've already discussed that. And for this very reason, it is difficult to evidence. But my friend, you don't need to engage in the battle. You know there's going to be a cover-up. What you need to do is connect yourself to source, and connect yourself to love, and to understand that, and understand how to protect yourself. Okay? You will have seen the results of long-term chronic stress and bullying in a toxic work environment. You will have seen this. Colleagues having mental breakdowns, long-term sick leaves, staff retention, staff turnover. All indicators of toxic work environments, but also indicators of the presence of psychopathic narcissists in the workplace. The worse the toxicity, the more likely it is that it's not just a chronic stress that is a toxic work environment, but that there is at least one or more psychopathic narcissists behind that, because it's what they feed off. Almost sounds like a Machiavellian Doctor Who monster. But the reason I'm telling you this is because you need to learn to protect yourself. I didn't protect myself, and I'm not talking about, you know, making a move as if it's a battle strategy. I'm talking about actually protecting yourself, because this is impacting on your physical and your mental health. Just as attitudes towards domestic violence are shifting away from victim blaming, we must now make determined efforts to change the toxic culture of work environments. And I was actually blamed. But you weren't supporting this. What did you do to support this person? I could write an encyclopedia on what I did to support that person. Narcissistic psychopaths don't accept support because their brains are wired up differently. This is now biologically, you know, researched. Interesting. If any of this is resonating with you and you really would like my help sincerely, I'm offering free 30-minute online discovery calls. There's like no obligation, but I will listen. I'm also offering the same free, don't know why, to C-class executives, because you guys are probably earning a lot more than I am. However, I don't need to because I'm being supported. Sorry, I find these structures. Anyway, any C-class executives who sincerely want to change the environments they find themselves in. I've actually had, you know, friends who have, you know, hit that six-figure salary. I've had several friends that have hit that six-figure salary and then realised the toxicity in workplaces was not worth that move. But also that people are coming to them in tears and nobody, you know, toxic work environment also means that nobody is getting on with their job. It becomes dysfunctional. So you're wondering how, you know, we know there's a lot of dysfunction in central government and the public sector. But it's not because people aren't working efficiently, it's because they're toxic work environments, and they, as people become more mentally and physically ill, they just become dysfunctional places. And we can turn this around, but I think we just need to rethink the way that we approach work and service of others. Also, anyone who's experienced workplace bullying, you don't have to be a C-class executive, but I know that's where there is most toxicity. If you're not the narcissistic psychopath in that band of C-class executives, you will be feeling that toxicity and having to deal with it on a daily level. And I'm not brave standing up, you're brave. Because if you're not a narcissistic psychopath, you're in that firing line and every day, and it is taking a toll on your health, but there are things you can do to protect your health and protect your energy. Because there are lots of genuine people who rise into those positions because they want to actually be agents of change and make things good. But it's kind of like that's the battle that you will face, and I'm here to support you is basically what I'm saying, and I can talk you through step by step things that you can do to keep yourself healthy and sane. Healthy and sane, that's where you want to be. So I was unhealthy and insane, I think, for a while there. I've come through the dark night of the soul, I've come out the other end. So again, experience counts for a lot, and it's very valuable. Now that was a rather long preamble to this series of Thursday Thoughts, and I'm going to record them to help you identify psychopathic narcissists in the workplace and also to help you protect yourself. Now, let me know if that is you and you do need help, because what I'm here letting you know is you are not alone. We can lessen the impacts of the toxic environment on your physical health and your mental well-being. I am really grateful to Dr. Karen Mitchell for publishing her and disseminating her work. She's the founder and the CEO of the Kalmar Institute, and her research elucidates findings from over 1,000 years of cumulative professional experiences. Now, I'm hoping that I can set up a video podcast with her at some point. Hello. That wasn't very subtle, was it? Hi, let's have a chat. Let's have a podcast. I would be really keen on having you on my channel. I'm also keen to interview local, national and international speakers on this subject. So, back to the simple, how can you spot a psychopathic narcissist in your work environment? And what can you do to protect yourself? So I'm going to give you 5 actions that you can do. That was all the preamble. So all my other Thursday thoughts around this will be much shorter. There will be a character trait, how you can spot a psychopathic narcissist, and then there will be actions, 5 actions that you can take to protect yourself. So Dr. Mitchell tells us a very interesting fact about narcissistic psychopaths. They often have partner henchmen, or women, whom they've groomed by offering them opportunity. And that leaves these henchmen indebted, entwined, and with invested interests in the narcissistic psychopath's deceit and scheming. In other words, people become culpable to that plotting and scheming and that Machiavellian behaviour, and indebted to the narcissist. So Dr. Mitchell writes, the bond is like that of a creeping vine living on a tree. Ultimately, it will suffocate and destroy. Quite consciously, this is done, and it's like an intentional parasite. For example, in a senior work environment, a CEO might appoint a particularly vulnerable person as their chief finance officer, because they're engaged in nefarious activities that they do not want exposed. A director or senior manager will appoint an inexperienced or unqualified family member or friend from their already controlled sphere of influence, following swift eradication through sudden restructuring of an inherited team. Does that make sense? Unplanned restructuring, in fact, all restructuring can be used, but unplanned restructuring of getting rid of a team. And then cronyism, it's called, isn't it? Appointing people who are inexperienced and unqualified family members. Often, the more inexperienced or unqualified or out of their depth the narcissistic psychopath feels, the more likely they are to appoint people in lower positions on lower wage salaries. So what this person did was get rid of a whole stream of people and then downgrade their jobs and reappoint people with even less experience. And now you can see how things become dysfunctional. And the whole organisations are undermined by this behaviour. It's intentional. So, if you see that cronyism, ask yourself if they've appointed someone from their sphere of influence who just doesn't have the CV to fit the job. They've appointed them because they're grooming them. Maybe they're grooming them to be a henchman. Maybe they were already a henchman, or maybe they're grooming other people. They take their team with them. There's other phrases for this, isn't there? The flying monkeys. That's not the henchman. The henchman is a particular person that they have groomed into that position. The henchman often has, wants to climb the career ladder as well and is playing the game. And they're in too deep when they realise, and they're indebted, and now they're culpable. So they are the ones that cover up the dirty work. So whatever the job description of those persons that have been brought in, the person is now the henchman, the newly groomed henchman. Now this is dark nepotism. And this is what marks out the dark personality of the workplace psychopathic narcissist beyond the norm. We all in life want to help our loved ones, our family and our friends and support them. But this is dark nepotism, and it is what marks out the dark personality of the workplace psychopathic narcissist beyond that normal behaviour. Dr. Mitchell warns, when you see two people that seem to present as a single force, oh, I always see them together, they seem like a really good team. Things like this, when you see two people presenting as a single force, this is a very, very strong red flag that a psychopathic narcissist is present. That's not me saying that. This is Dr. Mitchell saying this. Lifelong dedicated research. Brave woman. I'm going to repeat that a third time. When you see two people present as one, if you think, oh, I always see them together and they seem like a strong team, this is a very, very red flag that a narcissistic psychopath and their henchmen are present. It's ringing a few bells, isn't it? Now, I'm going to speak directly to the henchmen for a moment. Led by their ego into a trap. I'm not going to feel sorry for them, but I am going to speak to you. By the time you recognise yourself as having been groomed, it will be too late. Your professional placidity will have been eroded into a weakness so debilitating that the sickness in your stomach is slow growing and humorous. That might be a metaphor, it might not. The repression of your authentic self will have resulted in physical and mental dis-ease. And note that word, dis-ease. Now, you may know the narcissistic psychopath outside your work, which means that those tendrils are in other areas of your life. And by the time you realise that you have been groomed as the henchman, you are going to feel really sick. And I have seen people in this situation actually vomit. The sudden shock of your awakening to the truth of the situation will cause you to question your existential beliefs. You may think of yourself as a really spiritual or religious or righteous or ethical or moral person. And every belief you have had will be questioned. You'll be questioning yourself. The thing to remember is you've led yourself into this. Your ego led yourself into this. Your motivation was very, very different from the narcissistic psychopath because their brain is wired up differently. But you were hugely motivated by your ego and not in alignment at all with your true self. And you know, because you will know, I didn't handle that very well, or you will also come out of meetings and start to think that did not feel comfortable for me. And you are mistaking being groomed and being a henchman with being professional or presenting as a professional. It's very difficult if those people are in other areas of your life. Be forewarned, by the time you realise that loyalty is a one-way street, you will, as soon as you realise, you'll be thrown under the bus. Destroyed and discarded as collateral damage, like so many victims that you will have seen before you. Now, you will be in a situation where you were thinking, oh no, they might be wrong. No, we had a disciplinary because they were wrong. And then you realise, oh, actually, your whole position was just a veil. It was a performance, and you went along with it because people confuse being professional with going along with those narcissistic psychopathic people. And it's often because We live in a society that is so toxic in so many ways, and we work in so many work environments that are so toxic in so many ways that it becomes the norm. And we think that is being professional, and putting up with being in those environments or behaving like that is a sign of us being a professional, because we have been rewarded for that. We behave like that and we're rewarded, you know, and we get a promotion. And you have betrayed yourself, my friend. And it doesn't feel very good, does it? And you need to find your connection again. If that's you, reach out, because having gone through the darkest period, I can help you protect yourself, and I can help you feel good about yourself. I can help you find yourself if you've lost yourself. If you're the groomed henchman, or one of them, or one of the flying monkeys, you will have lost yourself, and it doesn't feel good. So, your ego and your fears. First of all, it's ego and it feels good. It's like an addiction, isn't it? And then your fear brings you into this position. A huge amount of spiritual development is needed on your part. And actually standing in the now and finding that connection again. When you do, believe me, you will feel the shift, and you will suddenly feel the relief, and you will feel happy and you'll realise that you haven't felt happy for decades. While in a very toxic work environment, I observed 2 henchmen, at least one of whom was so entwined that they became culpable in persecuting behaviours and corporate cover-ups and things like that. Sadly, they were described to me as good people, but they're good people based on the fact that they were a tight-knit community, a fellowship of Christians. Now, history is littered with the devastating evidence of psychopathic narcissistic predators who have positioned themselves as organisational, political or religious cult leaders. As soon as you hear someone say how disappointed they were that no one would put in the work to sustain the new church they wanted to found, that's a red flag. It's not the sign of a good person. It's the language of failed control. Psychopathic narcissists have to be in control. They have to be able to manipulate everything around them. They perform compassion in order to position themselves with vulnerable, empathetic people, victims. They are potential victims because they are predators. It's a strategy. It's a game of control. So, how to protect yourself? Well, I was advised by colleagues to contact my HR department, but they didn't respond. And again, this is another sign of a toxic work environment when the HR department are working for like senior managers, but not for everybody within the organisation. And actually the very name, human resource, I will say again, you are a human. You are not a resource. You are just a human, just humans. You're not a resource to be used and thrown away and discarded. You're a human. And once you understand that, it's actually really simple. Once you realise that you are life. You are life. You are connected to life. Life is just oozing through every cell in your body, and it's the same life that is divine. It's the same life that creates the universe. It's a position of just continual stream of love, and it's pulsing through every cell in your body. That's a very different position to being a human resource, isn't it? You're not a resource for someone else. You're a human. You are you. So, that didn't work because you know that you're in a toxic work environment. where the HR departments are the gatekeeper of the toxic culture. They are the key to changing the culture as well. But, you know, I wouldn't want to be a director of human resources because it's your job. You're either the narcissistic psychopath or you're in the toxic environment that you're trying to make a difference. Really hard, really hard. And always be true to yourself. Again, learn how to protect yourself. Very, very simple techniques. And learn how to listen to your body. Learn how to always be true to yourself. I was advised by colleagues then to contact the union. Now, in this particular organisation, the union representatives are so stressed to overcapacity dealing with the grievances and disciplinary actions that the union reps themselves were ill and diseased and aggrieved and being disciplined because they weren't towing the party line. I think George Orwell was trying to explain a lot to us, wasn't he, in Animal Farm in 1984, and none of us listen. We're not listening. We need to change that whole culture. So if the union reps are also line managed within the organisation where they're representing people, this creates a direct conflict of interest, doesn't it? I don't know what the answer is, but that's how things are structured. Now, if that's how things are structured, and the structure has innate conflicts of interest, you're never going to... Fairness just doesn't exist then, does it? However much some people are there in a toxic environment, you have to change a lot of organisational ways of thinking. And the fact that toxic environments have become the norm, so it's kind of insidious. Actually, once you step out of it and you feel so much better and you look back, you can really see. So this is what I'm saying. So many people now, people are standing up, shining a light on toxic cultures and toxic work environments, that you're shining a light on those dark areas. And once you see them for what they are, you realise you don't want to be part of that, because you want to be healthy and you want to be happy and you want to be valuable and you want to be you. Because you are you. You don't have to perform or be a resource, because your value is you, right? It starts to become much more simple. Now, we know the culture of organisations need to change if we recognise that they're toxic. And I think I've given you a lot of signposts to that. So on to the next bit. YouTube is littered with how to deal with. But most of the how to deal with is from the position of psychological operational strategy. It's psychology. Well, psychology is engaging in battle. And the only strategy I would employ is the strategy of the Lotus Sutra. So I'm not going to get all religious and theological on you. But we may bring some interviews in around this. Don't engage, I would say, particularly in a psychological battle. Now, I can't give you advice on how to deal with it in the workplace because I didn't engage in the warfare. And quite frankly, I failed miserably because I believed in the system. And I thought, you know, people would listen, and I thought there was a fairness innate in the system, but there wasn't. There is no fairness innate in a toxic environment. So anyway, but it still has to be done. Shining a light on those crevices still has to be done, but do not attach to expected outcome or outcome. You know what's going to happen. It doesn't matter, and do not take it personally. So quite frankly, I you know, can't give you advice about how to climb up that ladder in a toxic environment. What I can do is I can help you become aware of how being in the sphere of a psychopathic narcissist, of daily toxicity, is damaging your mental and physical health. And you, my friend, are more valuable to you than anyone else. And I can help you become aware of how to protect your health, your physical health, your mental health, and also your energy field. Now, I found myself needing to take showers, for example, several times a day, just like someone who's been raped. And this need increased as the abuse increased. Remember, I was just trying to get on with my job, right? If you are feeling the walls closing in and that ickiness of being in a toxic work environment, or you have a meeting scheduled with a narcissistic psychopath, a bully, I leave you today with some very simple advice. 5 actions. 1. I always do that, don't I? 1. Action 1. Before the meeting, drink a glass of water or a bottle of water. Use meditative sips. So this is concentrating in the moment, connecting with the water. As you're drinking water, be aware that water itself is healing. Be aware that you are made of water. By default, it connects you to the whole universe around you. Let each sip ground you and connect you. It's a little ritual. Go into the restroom and hold your wrists like this. Hold your wrists under cold running water. And again, allow a conscious memory to form of how this is feeling. It's calming, it's protecting, it's grounding you. Action 2, in the meeting, take water in with you and sip it if you can. If you can, place a jacket or a bag or something on your lap to protect your solar plexus. Physically protecting your solar plexus from this person. You often find people, cross your arms. It's not very strong or very good posture. If you can, keep yourself open, but physically put something in the way. Your lanyards, your bag, a jumper, around your waist, or a desk. Physically protect yourself. Action 3, immediately after the meeting, go to the restroom and hold your wrists again under cold running water, because you need to actually ground that energy out. And you can even do a little visualization where your wrists are under the cold water and you are imagining, so as you are feeling in that meeting that you might have been sort of starting to feel, maybe you were punched in the stomach, maybe it's more insidious, and it's just, go to the restroom, run your wrists under cold water. Be aware that that energy is draining. Just watch it go down the plug hole. This is why having a shower is really useful, because you can physically, your whole body, the energy from your whole body can be cleared. Obviously, having a shower at work's not normal, or several times a day, but several times a day you can go to the restroom and run your wrists under the cold water and sip the water, knowing that when you take a sip of water in, you are sipping some water that's come from the source of the earth, that's come from the water in the clouds that connect you. Use that to connect you to source, because narcissistic psychopaths will do everything they can to isolate you from support. It's important that you just know that you're supported. The function of life is to support life in your life. You are supported. These are little rituals you can do, and they make a huge difference, believe me. Now, immediately after the meeting, we're running our wrists under the cold water. But the other thing was, so I used to have a vomit reflex, and I actually remembered after such encounters, so every time I had a one-to-one, and they just seemed to be increasing more and more, and it was just being bullied. I could see if this person was having a bad day, I actually would say to colleagues, oh my God, just to know that she's going to take it out on me, because, that's what happens. After one meeting, I had a vomit reflex and I felt so sick. I went to the restroom, and as I walked down the corridor, I heard this person's voice through someone else's phone crying that apparently I'd bullied them. They'd stormed in the room and stormed out of the room. And I had just sat there, but I had sat there with my bag on my lap, my bottle of water, and I know how to connect myself to source. It wasn't enough. At the time, I still got ill because it was incessant and went on for 18 months, and I should have just removed myself from that environment because it was affecting me so much. So the fifth action you can take is a little bit more practical. Make sure that after work and after writing the fourth action is after work, as soon as you can, meet and talk to a colleague or a friend about what happened and make a note in your journal. Now this is useful because if you don't, you start to think, did that really happen? Oh, but maybe I was horrible. Well, maybe it was. And your thinking will position you into a position of a victim, or you'll start to question yourself and your own sanity. So it's important that you go as soon as you can after those meetings and talk, preferably to a colleague, about what happened, or make a note in your journal. Now remember, you're not gossiping about the person, you are just recalling what happened so that when you speak, the narrative is clear in your head. That was your experience. Do not let anyone else negate your experience. Your experience is your truth. So don't talk in a bitchy, gossipy way, but go and tell someone what happened. If there's no one to tell, talk to the mirror, but preferably a senior colleague, although they're probably going to close ranks around you anyway. It doesn't matter because they're shining the lights on the dark crevices. We are now shining lights on this darkness in society, and by doing so we are making that shift, okay, and saying we're not accepting this anymore, okay, and it's really important. And the fifth action is that after work and after writing in your journal, don't let those thoughts keep going through your head. So before you go to sleep, again, if you either have a shower and let that go, or hold your wrists again under cold running water and make it a meditation. So these are very simple mindfulness meditations to clear the mind, not to make it full. These are really simple things you can do. So have the shower or run your wrists under cold water, and consciously let that toxicity that affected you leave you before you go to sleep. Then focus on something nice. Watch some comedy, cuddle up with someone you love, read a good book, something that will take your mind so that you're not rethinking this narrative while you're asleep, because you don't need to. You've told your truth to your journal, you've told your truth to another person, you are clear about what happened, you are clear because you understand how it made you feel, and your feelings about a situation, how you feel, is your authentic truth. And nobody can negate that. Your experience is your truth. And if people don't believe you, that's their problem, it's not yours. Don't make it your problem, okay? Stand in your truth. Always be true to yourself. When you start losing yourself, that's when mental and physical illness gets compounded and exponentially is very, very damaging and destroying. Now, if I could go back and advise myself, it would have been to jump ship when everyone else did. And I think I said that to someone, you know, I really wish I'd jumped ship when everyone else did. I was just trying to keep my head down and get on with my job. It was just such a toxic environment. Try and get out of that department or get out of that organisation. Whatever they're paying you is not worth you jeopardising your health for. I have seen friends, you know, all their life really wanted to reach those 6 figures, wanted to get those bonuses, and then when they're there, it's so toxic. They take early retirement. It's almost like all they ever wanted to do was, you know, create value in life, and the opposite happens because it's so damaging. So I would go out and I would say to myself, oh, you should have got out. Move department, move organisation. Whatever they're paying you is not worth jeopardizing your physical and mental health for. When you start feeling the toxicity in your body, you need to value yourself. You are worth so much more than that. Not, I should be earning more money because... Actually, the Americans call it compensation. The Chinese call it compensation. Your wage is compensation. What's it compensation for? It's compensation for your health. Your physical health, your mental health, your well-being, your life. You're being compensated because you're giving your life away. Don't give your life away. Reconnect. Reconnect to the universality of life. And now I am a fully supported person. I understand that you will be supported, and the easiest way to let things flow in your life is through calm stillness. And if people don't buy into that calm stillness around you, that's their stress, that's their toxicity. You don't need to be something. You don't need to for someone else to be valuable. You are valuable inherently, just as you are.